self-confidence, firstly with all of these, the key word self in front of, right? Because anytime we just remove and we just say confidence or trust or reliability or responsibility, it seems like there's like a fog or a gray area in between the connection with other people and the connection with you, right? So trust, for example, most of the time we don't really look at trust of ourselves. We're always like, can I trust this person? Can I trust this organization? Can I trust this theory, right? There's not many times we redirect it here, right? But with all of these things, it just denotes the fact that there's no looking anywhere else. You don't need to look anywhere else. You just need to look at yourself. So in this idea of all of them, really the self-confidence one, I talked about it 2 classes ago when we talked about goal setting and achieving, right? When you dream big, the world tells you that dream is too big, right? That's generally how our society is made of. So if you have this big idea of this dream life, pretty much everybody, because the normal society is very big, tells you that that's not so much possible, or it's going to be very hard. Some of us are born into environments that are very uplifting, right? So maybe your parents were very successful, or they had a very successful life, so their idea or their reality of what they think is possible is greater. So they're constantly telling you, keep dreaming, this is possible, you're able to do this. So building up that confidence, right? But we need to realize that confidence is already kind of latent. It's already a latent potential within us that's already there, right? You look at a child, like, it varies, but a very young child who's just learning to kind of move his body, move around, do things, they're very confident, right? They really have no care in the world about anything other than what's going on within them and with what they're doing, because they're learning so much. But, no one can really make fun of them or tell them something bad to make them feel worse. It's very hard to do that with the very bright and vibrant children. As soon as they start reaching the 4 to 8 range, that's when a lot of the programming gets done through, the parents, a lot of, authority, ask for permission, have your manners. So it's very really holding down in a sense. And then you go out into into school, and bullying isn't as crazy in the young, even though I feel like it's expanding a lot there, but bullying just becomes such an extravagant thing as they move into their teens and things like this, right? So this whole period of time, you're constantly removed of the confidence in which you already had, right? You're removed of all this confidence, this very basic confidence, right? Even if you hadn't had much experience, it's very basic, I just know I can do things, and I know I'm happy, and I know I can do all the, it's just knowing. There's no rational understanding about it, right? That's because they're always connected here. You're always connected in the moment. You're always just doing what's going to give you that next greatest fulfillment in every moment, right? So now we fast forward to what we're doing now, and self-confidence seems to be very missing. It seems missing in our society for most people, right? Very basic examples where I always use this one. You're in a grocery store line or on the OC transport or the bus or something, and it's quiet, and someone says something and you want to say something back, but if you say it and they don't answer, you're going to look stupid, or you say the wrong thing, they're going to laugh at you, or what are people going to think because everyone's going to hear you? It's this stupidity that goes on in your mind, right? But you had an instant inclination to say something, so why didn't you do that? Why didn't it just flow out? Why didn't it just right? There was a block. There was some sort of cage that you've placed on yourself only because of this. Nothing really else. Because, self-confidence is very simple. It's not it's not a very extravagant thing. To think that you need to build self-confidence is more of an illusion than anything. It's more about removal. Because your self-confidence should already be there, when you were a child, very young, and everything was going great before the conditioning of your parents, society, friends, everything else, right? So really what self-confidence is tuning into here, and your intuition rather, because you say tune into your heart, you're like, what does that mean, right? But they know what intuition means, because you've all felt the gut feeling, you've all felt an inclination, right? But what intuition is not, I'll explain what it is not, because I can't really say what it is, because it's more of a personal thing. Intuition is not your rational mind. It's not a voice. And I'm saying voice in the sense of language. It may be a voice in the sense of a push, or a kind of an oomph to do something, right? Or say something, or think something. But intuition is not do this because it'll help you do that, or this is a good decision because of that, or don't do this because, that's not intuition. Intuition is just I'm going to do this and I'm going to keep doing it. Or I'm going to say this and I'm just going to say it. It's a flow, right? Very rarely do we intuitively feel like an intuition and then like rationally have to like overthink everything, and then we make the decision. Because generally when we start overthinking everything, we go in the opposite of what our intuition was actually telling us in the first place, right? That first inclination. Always that first, why do they always say, go with your gut feeling, that first inclination that you have, that's your intuition. So intuition is very basic, and it's almost too simple for most people, because they think, well, I've used my rational mind, my scientific mind my whole life to make decisions. So I can't use it now, so what am I going to do, right? But that's what self-confidence is, because self-confidence is just tapping into that. Tapping into that potential that you already have there, waiting for you, and making decisions that are kind of unapologetic. Not waiting for someone to tell you to do this, or not waiting for society to say this is an okay thing to do. It's doing things, taking the risk and pushing through that, and willing to make mistakes. Because really, where does all this negative reinforcement we've gotten from our parents, from friends, from whoever, right? And I'm just generalizing here. Where have we gotten that from? We generally have gotten it from mistakes that are quote unquote bad, right? Bad mistakes. But of course, mistake is just another way of doing something, right? It may have not been the way to do it in that certain situation, but it was just another way. So it's like this idea of always living in the gray rather than black and white. Like, we always have this idea of success and failure. Success is like winning the lottery, and failure is like dying or having no place to live. It's always like these extremes. Failure can't be like a little bit of failure, or like kind of a medium success, or like a medium. It can't be that. It always has to be this or that. Right? But I've experienced like 4 failures today, right? So like why it's not extreme. It's just these small little things that you're constantly kind of learning and growing from and experiencing. That's where you reevaluate that. So when we reevaluate the mistake idea, it's the same thing as the trust concept, because the trust concept, it always obviously stems with the self-trust, where we no longer have self-trust is because we've been guilted over all our mistakes. All the mistakes we've ever made, we've just been guilted, right? So to think that any logical person, because we're living in a logical mind, logical society, you would ever want to do that again and risk making that mistake, no one can blame you for that. So really, you can't really blame for yourself for not having self-trust, because you've been guilted your entire life for all the mistakes you've made, right? And now that, it's like, has anyone experienced like an injury or something, and then it was experienced in a certain method, and then anytime you come across that same way or that same experience, it's like you're like hesitant, you're like trying to like kind of like protect that area or something. I know I've experienced a lot, especially in the fighting days. It was always like that. This is the typical idea. We don't have trust that we can learn from mistakes, right? We don't have trust that we can actually learn and have lessons from these mistakes, so that when the situation arises again, we don't have the trust that we actually learned from that mistake, and we're going to actually become better from that. So there's no way that the mistake could happen again. Or if it did, it wouldn't even be close to the kind of detriment that occurred the first time. It's a very interesting thing to wrap your head around, where the self-trust really has nothing to do with anything other than the idea that you don't think you can learn from the mistakes. You don't think you can learn from your experiences, right? You're always like kind of attaching to the old, like I made this mistake, I'm going to constantly keep making the mistake. It's kind of how like we judge people, right? So-and-so does something to you, and they may have done it like 10 years ago. But because you're so attached to what they did, you say, okay, because so-and-so did this yesterday, they will always do that in the future. It's always like this, like here and then here. We're not just looking at them how they are right now, right in this moment. Because even though yesterday they may have like killed somebody, maybe today they're different. Right? But we're not usually allowing that perception to come into our mind, so we can never release from that attachment to what's happened. So it's the same thing with ourselves. It's like mirror, 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 right? So the self-trust idea is we need to realize that the guilt is what's overpowering this inclination to always kind of go with the flow, and realize that we can constantly keep learning, constantly keep expanding, constantly keep pushing the envelope, taking risks, making more mistakes, but learning that in each and every moment, I can trust that I will know what to do, know what to say, know what to think in any situation that arises. So I can walk out this door and a mob can come, or I can walk out this door and like news reporters all around me telling me I won the lottery. And both of them, I'm good on the camera, and I'm also good to handle myself if a mob comes, right? Both situations, I'm understanding that I can handle myself. And of course this comes with an accumulation of experience, right? Because both I feel like I can handle because of many of the experiences that I've done in my life. But at the same time, it doesn't need to come from that. It doesn't need to. Because as soon as you're always saying like, I need the external to prove me this, I need this to prove me that, then you're just always going to be in that. I'm going to touch on that in a moment about this goal setting versus growth awareness, right? Not always setting goals, just sinking your mind into more of a growth awareness. So self-confidence, self-trust are very connected, very obviously connected, right? You have the self-confidence, the trust will always kind of be there. Doesn't matter what situation comes, I can handle myself. And that also allows for a very experiential life. You won't be afraid to step into situations that are unknown, right? You won't be afraid to step into situations where you feel like you've lost some sort of power. Because generally this like confidence thing is actually stemming from this egoic persona you've developed about yourself. I am this person, I have these skill sets, I look like this, I do this, I talk like this, right? So I'm put in a situation that forces me out of that, I'm breaking this, and now people are going to view me differently. And who knows what they're going to think, right? And that may lower my confidence, right? So it's this like wishy-washy like mind, like whatever that we're creating. Like the prison bars, like boom, 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 and then we're putting like the concrete block on top, and then we're like welding it, and then it's like that's basically the analogy of what we've been doing to ourselves, right? It's beautiful.